Welcome to Some Stutter Law,
Newfoundland and Labrador's first podcast
about communicating differently.
I'm Paul.
I'm Laura.
I'm Greg.
Yes, today is part two of the interview with Richard Holmes. And today we're going to listen to the second half of that interview.
Last time we heard Richard talk to Greg a little bit about his early life, stuttering as a child, and how he became a speech language pathologist.
And we also talked about Richard considering himself to be a sort of a newbie and wants to be a newbie because he's always learning. There's so many changes and shifts in paradigms, approaches for the clinical intervention for people who stutter and families.
In today's episode, we're going to get to hear him talk a little bit more about what comes after that, how he's looking about expanding his practice, and where he goes from here.
But before we get there, we want to give a shout out to the student linguists at Memorial University. Just last month, no, it was back in September, the end of September, when the Newfoundland and Labrador Stuttering Association had their walk, run, and roll. And that was an annual charitable event where the Newfoundland Stuttering Association looks towards the community to raise funds for a bursary for people who stutter and people who have other communication differences to help offset the cost of the charges or the fees for speech language pathology sessions. So SLAM, the student linguists at Memorial University, came out in full force, raised some money for the walk, run, and roll, and then continued to raise money through a bake sale at Memorial University. They set up in the main hall of the science building and sold some delicious baked goods and brought in a little more cash for the bursary.
That's awesome.
Greg, I don't know what we ended up with for the bursaries, but if you can give us a little reminder.
Sure. Well, just to follow up on what Paul was saying, you see, we the Newfoundland and Labrador Stuttering Association, we held our 7th annual. It's called A Million Things I Need to Say: Walk, Run, and Roll for Stuttering Awareness, and our bursary program. We call it A Million Things I Need to Say because people who stutter have a million things to say. But unfortunately, due to challenges with our stuttering, we often slip into the shadows. But anyhow, so this is our 7th one, which was held on September the 29th, and we had a really great turnout. And we had a number of politicians speak. This year we had our first barbecue, and which was a real drawing card. And thanks to Paul. Paul organized a team of his linguistic students called SLAM, and they came out, and I think there was about 8 or 9 people. Paul, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, about that.
And so with the help with the help of SLAM's financial support, and thank you again, SLAM, because it's great meeting you all. So with the proceeds raised, we were able to provide this year for $1,200 bursaries, and which is a huge feat because there's speech therapy is expensive, and there's really no subsidy in our province. So every opportunity for bursaries help out. So anyhow, so check out the NLSA website and NLS stuttering nlstuttering.ca, and you can find all the information about the prerequisites to apply for bursary. But you only have till the end of November to get a bursary application.
What types of people might be able to get these bursaries?
The bursaries, Laura, are for preschool, school age, adolescents, adults, and seniors who stutter, and for others who also are challenged with other communication disorders.
And do they have to live in Newfoundland?
Yeah, this is a Newfoundland Labrador.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd be nice to do a worldwide, but the need is great here in Newfoundland, and we only have the poor bursaries.
Yeah. So if you are listening and you are not a person who stutters yourself, but you know someone who does and who could, who has been thinking about taking speech pathology, speech treatment, um, let them know about the bursary. Invite you to help them out. I was on the board that reviewed the applications from last year, and there is an overwhelming need. There are more people that apply for the bursaries than we can
Yeah.
actually fund, and so going forward, we hope and pray for more funding so we can reach more people and provide more help for them. But some of the stories that you read about on these bursaries are really moving. There's a need for people of all ages, but the story is certainly of the young kids going to school and not having an opportunity to speak in class is heartbreaking, and also hearing about the same kids getting bullied out in the recess. So they have a double whammy. They can't speak in class and they can't speak outside of class either. So hopefully our our uh, our bursary can help with some of the if not the speech issues, but the psychological and the mental health issues as well.
Mm-hmm.
All those things bubbling away under the
Yeah,
iceberg.
exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah. So we 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 will appreciate your support by sharing the information about the bursaries and just visit the Newfoundland Labrador Stuttering Association website for all the details and our Facebook page as well. So
You can also help by sharing the podcast, sharing information about Some Stutter Law, checking out our webpage, somestutterlawluh.ca, because although we'd love to be able to offer bursaries to everyone who is listening to our podcast today, there are ways that we can help. And one of those ways is by sharing the information that come from Greg's really great interviews with our guests this season. So
thank you,
without
Laura.
further ado, let's listen to the second half of Greg's interview with speech language pathologist and fellow stutterer Richard Holmes.
It isn't worth the trouble.
I like how you phrased your answer, Richard, saying that because some answers I've got is no, I wouldn't take this pill because stuttering is who I am. I wouldn't know myself without the stuttering, and it's like me as well. It's Greg O'Grady is a person who stutters, and others says yes, I would take the pill, but I like how you phrase it as an experiment. I think that's great. It's just a very wonderful way of looking at it, as an experiment.
Yeah, I think so. And you know what? Thought did cross my mind. I was like, oh, how would that? Because the idea, it's like this is the big thing in counseling as well. Let's say you're going through counseling for anxiety. I remember I'll be upfront about this. I once had a therapist say to me, she said, she was like, okay, so you want to give up this one thing or you want this one thing to change, but you have to know that you can't just give up one part of yourself. Giving up one thing is going to have a ripple effect and change everything else. So I'm sure there's things you really like about yourself. And maybe let's explore how much are those maybe as a benefit of your anxiety, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Or it's like don't it's like that idea of like throwing out like maybe that's not a good analogy, but you can't just throw one thing. You're gonna throw at everything, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
Like let's explore what that would look like. And I mean, there's ways to do that, so you're only gonna minimize the one really negative aspect. That's definitely
Mm-hmm.
possible, but I thought that was always really useful. It's like, you know, if you get rid of the anxiety, maybe you won't have the same drive that makes you prepare that hard for the exams.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like let's explore that. Like, what would the opposite of anxiety look like, right?
Mm-hmm. You know,
So that would be a thought.
yeah.
Maybe if I didn't stutter, maybe some of the nice parts about myself would change as well.
You know, listening to you, Richard, how how you responded to this question reminds me of a cliche which I've heard years ago, and I don't know who who sort of introduced me to it, but you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's actually what I was gonna say. Is like, yeah, maybe that would be a situation of that.
yeah, because I mean, we've all experienced a lot of lived experiences with with our stuttering, but you know, what there's nothing wrong with trying to manage our stuttering, trying to uh, trying to sort of make our challenging experiences easier, but you don't throw our experiences though, because stuttering I feel is both, it can be a nemesis, but it can also be a positive as well, because we've all benefit from having a stutter, like for example I met you,
Yeah,
I've been introduced to the stuttering community, made some good friends, so it has its positives.
exactly. And I think sort of that's a wonderful approach for anybody who is, because there's a lot of people who come at their feelings of stuttering with maybe a bit more resentment for it, and I think that's a great place to begin to think about, like, hey, but let's first think about all the things that it adds to your life,
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm,
let's begin there.
mm-hmm. Uh, Richard, you mentioned that you've been in the field now for about 5 years. From then to now, and I sense I know the answer. Has your attitude towards speech therapy changed now? The clinical
Mm.
approach.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's sort of going with the general the movement of the field towards just what's sort of functionality is sort of a big one. And there's lots of different sort of acronyms and different things about this, but it's essentially going from thinking about what's like impairment based to, like, I almost think of like participation based. So like, you could go with somebody's articulation. You could do drills till the cows come home to make them say a sound perfectly. But like, can they, if they can say the sound that they want when ordering at a drive-through, and the person on the other end understands them, that's a great goal to have,
Mm,
right? Not like make 100% accuracy when you're sitting in front of a speech therapist. So it's sort of more that idea of like, let's really think about what your day-to-day life and your um, what's important to you, and let's work towards that. And if it doesn't, short, if you're like a news anchor or something, you probably don't need absolutely perfect speech.
mm-hmm,
Let's more work towards like you participating in your life in the most full way you're able to.
mm-hmm. Richard, as a person who stutters, do you recognize and appreciate your accomplishments? The reason why is I've spoken to a number of people stutter that when I ask this question, the answer varies, but there's some people stutter who are degrees, the professionals, the sort of they have accomplished a lot in their lives, but they don't appreciate their accomplishments.
Oh, interesting. Like, you feel like some people who are quite accomplished who stutter, they're still sort of like hard on themselves and don't
Correct.
actually.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what though? I would say that's something for a lot of really high achieving people. I mean, that's kind of why they're high achieving in a sense, is that they're striving so much, right? They're their own hardest coach. They're the fire at their own rear end, if you want to say it that way, right? And that's what pushes them. And I can't really speak to exactly how well or healthy that necessarily is. But yeah, if you like watch like a documentary on the most achieving athletes, they're pretty hard on themselves, right? Like there's a lot of
Mm.
and so they're, of course, they're not going to give themselves a pat on the back because they're thinking about how they can improve,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's and so whether that's related to stuttering or not, I'm not sure. I think there's definitely been points in my life when I've tried to strive towards things in a sense to try to um, hmm, not make up, I don't know the right word, but essentially trying to overcompensate
Mm-hmm.
for my stuttering. And that's one, and that's in some ways a blessing because you have something that's motivating, but how healthy that is, I'm not sure, right?
Mm.
Because then you're always sort of seeing yourself as something you need to be overcompensating for, and that's maybe not the healthiest mindset to have.
So, as a person who stutters, then do you appreciate your accomplishments?
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't answer your question. um,
Oh no, that's
I,
good. Too.
I yes, but I also, you know what, Greg, I mean, I think this is something that when I was younger, I would very much say, "Oh yeah, I did that just from my own whatever hard work and dedication." But as I'm getting older, I'm really realizing how um, fortunate I've been to be able to have the opportunity to do any things I have, and all the wonderful people and opportunities that have helped me be there, and the sort of, yeah, just like that, we're sort of recognizing that. So I don't so much think of that as like recognize or like say like give myself a pat on the back. It's more like, wow, that's really fortunate that I've had these opportunities, right? And that's sort of, yeah, I thought I just, yeah.
Mm. So, I mean, your response sort of leads into my second last question, Richard. How important is self-care for people who stutter? Sometimes I feel that we as people who stutter neglect or don't even know how to self-care. We know how not to self-care, but how important is self-care to people stuttering? What would you recommend or suggest?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I know with my speech, it is quite affected by how healthy and well I'm feeling. So self care, like just even getting enough sleep, eating well, exercising, and like not putting too much on my plate. That's going to come out in my speech. So in a way, actually, I've in some ways probably developed some healthy habits in life because I know if I slip up, my speech is
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna pay for it, right? Like, I actually remember a really so to answer your question, I think it's very important, and actually using it's almost kind of a nice thing to use your speech as a barometer of like
True.
how you're feeling, right?
Yeah.
And like even for managing your mental health in some senses, it's like if you're feeling well, it's probably going to help. It's going to make speaking with ease and comfort a lot easier as well. So you kind of have a nice like outward indicator that you can use.
Mm. Well, it's so true, Richard. Now, I do have many more questions, but I'll leave you with this last question. Perhaps we may have to do a part two down the road sometime. But so, as a person who stutters, do you have any last thoughts to share with our listeners who stutter? Any last thoughts?
Yeah, I think um, another cliche saying that is really helpful to me is that too shall change. So, because you know what? If you're having a day you think you could say anything to anybody, yeah, just knowing that that will change. that and if you're having a really bad day, that's going to change as well.
Mm.
And I actually think, often people say that too shall change, saying just when things are really hard, just remember that, well, it's not going to last. but it's almost a helpful thing to remember that when things are going really well too, like, yeah, everything comes back to homeostasis. Because I remember, I think when I was younger, there was times where I was quite desperate and like thinking about what I'm going to do about my speech. And like, I mean, it's um, maybe hard to believe for people listening when you hear me speaking relatively with ease right now, but um, yeah, there's times when I like, especially when I was in university, wondering like, oh dear, like what am I going to possibly be able to do here? I had people when I was trying to, get experience to get into the speech pathology program kind of tell me like, yeah, you probably won't be able to do this because of your speech, and the desperation I had trying to search for ways to change my speech at that time. And if I could just tell that person then, like, this is gonna change, right? Like it's not gonna last like this. And actually, the more you dwell on how hard it is right now, that's only gonna make it harder. So just knowing it's just like the wind, it's gonna change.
Oh, definitely, Richard, definitely. Well, Richard, we will have to close now. But on behalf of some sort of law, thank you very much for taking the time to have this conversation today. Is it, this definitely has been a very positive conversation. So thank you very much.
Oh, great! Thank you so much for having me and for everything that you do in creating this. I think this is fantastic. I think if I could even just hear you, if I went back 10 years and could hear some of these conversations, that would have added a lot to me and the sort of journey I was on. So the fact that you're putting in the time and effort to do this, and all the work that you've done on yourself to be the person you are now, I think is just such a positive role model for people who stutter. So yeah, really, really appreciate you.
Well, I just loved listening to someone with that dual perspective that we referred to in the last episode. Being someone who stutters and a speech language pathologist really gives Richard a unique perspective on the issue. I also loved it when he was that analogy about the tiger. Greg, could you speak to that a little bit before we sign off?
Sure. This during our conversation, Richard and I talked about acceptance, and so I mean this, the A words is very difficult for me to say, so I'll start again. Is acceptance, and acceptance is very challenging for a lot of people who stutter. So I asked Richard the question. I said, Richard, do you accept your stuttering? And Richard said he actually fluctuates. And so I asked him how would he rate it on a scale from 1 to 10. One, when he doesn't accept it. 10, he actually does accept it. And one thing about Richard during his conversation with me, he's very transparent with all of these challenges. So he said he's stuttering fluctuates, and at this point, because we were, one person who stutters is talking to another, he feels very comfortable talking to me, whereas he has his bad days and his good days. And so then he actually said that uh, oh, overall he does feel like a confident person who stutters in many ways. And then he also shared the example that having a stutter, one it's part of who we are. It's part of who we are, and this is what we have to live with. And but there are ways to sort of work with speech therapists to help us manage and sort of stutter with ease. And I think this is, so what he was saying about stuttering with ease is similar to dancing and playing with stuttering. And it really stood up when how he described it. Is like dancing in harmony with our stuttering, and knowing that we will have our difficult days, and with me, I have my good days and my bad days, and but it's part of who we are, and it's all in our perspective of how we sort of accept it and work with it. And also, he also mentioned, getting back to Laura's question about the tiger analogy, and this tiger analogy came from Stuttering is Cool, a guide to stuttering in a fast talking world, with Frankie Banky and friends Daniel Rossi. So in Daniel's book, he talks about uh, uh, stuttering stuttering being similar to a tiger, and Daniel says tie blank and so it's the whole process of trying to accept our stuttering, and you know training the tiger to walk in harmony with the tiger, as opposed to the tiger always bouncing back on us.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And so when all is said and done, it's almost like we need to befriend our stuttering, embrace our stuttering, because it's who and what we are. So it's so eventually we may be able to walk down the street with a tiger on the leash. So it's part of befriending, accepting.
Right. I
Mm.
love that. The dancing with harmony.
Mhm.
It's poetic.
It reminds me of another phrase that I see a lot on the stuttering support group Discord channel. Stutter beautifully, right? This idea that stuttering does not have to be something that is out of harmony, out of sync, or out of a something that is should be hidden and should be avoided. You can stutter beautifully. It can be part of a harmonious life.
Definitely, Paul. Definitely, definitely. And as I mentioned, as I shared before in the first review of Richard's in interview, also shared with them about my friend Mary Wood's comment about when I referred to stuttering as a train wreck experience at times. Mary said, instead of using phrasing it as a train wreck, just view it as a wonderful period or experience of stuttering. So
Mm.
for Mary to say that, to view the train wreck experience in another perspective of, um, if you're saying I've had a wonderful period of stuttering, it's similar to dancing in harmony with the stutter. Is almost
Sure.
as if it softens the intensity. So I think the more that we learn to befriend our stuttering, the more the intensity of our struggles with the primary secondary characteristics lessens, and we're slowly learning how to stutter with ease.
Hmm. Hmm.
Absolutely. So thank you so much to Richard for taking the time to appear on our podcast and share his insights. Um, what a great thing to be able to share with our audience. But we've got more great things coming up, haven't we?
We certainly do.
In 2 weeks, we're going to be hearing part of Greg's interview with Daniel Allen Cox. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'll just say that Daniel Allen Cox is a writer living in Montreal. He is an ex Jehovah's Witness. He is a gay man, and he is a person who stutters. So those are three of his stories coming together in his life as a person who stutters. And Greg, is there anything that you want to tease out to our audience about this interview?
Well, there's one thing that is there's one statement that Daniel says, which sort of gives us some a synopsis of the book. He said, I spent 18 years in a group that taught me to hate myself. You cannot be queer and a Jehovah's Witness, is one or the other. And this is the crux of Daniel's book, because the themes in his book is self-preservation, survival, and surviving all of his experiences while with the Jehovah's Witnesses. So, it's an excellent book.
Excellent. I can't wait to hear you talk with him about it next week. But that's all for us for this week's episode. As always, please like, share, subscribe. Check out our website at somestutterlaw.ca. We'll link to that below in the video description. And I'd say we'll also link to Daniel Allen Cox's book for anybody who wants to read ahead if they're feeling a little bit like a keener. And perhaps Daniel Rossi's book as well that we referenced in Richard's interview.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And a special thank you to my new two co-hosts, Laura and Paul, because I really appreciate their insight and support. So thank you both very much.
Thank you, Greg.
Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to be here, absolutely. Some Stutter Law is brought to you today with help from Memorial University, the Newfoundland Labrador Stuttering Association, and a whole team of volunteers behind the scenes, without whom today's episode would not have been possible.